So welcome back, everybody, after our extended summer break to the regular More Kingston Smith David Reviews. Look at the world of advertising, as ever, joined by Jason, who's now back from having his bucket and spade with him, and delighted that for our first chat in the autumn, we have a proper industry legend in Danny Kleinman. So, hi, Danny.
Hello there.
I know you have just been shooting, so I just kind of thought maybe you could start by telling us how you found directing in the world post-COVID.
Well, I seem to be... I haven't got it, honestly.
You want me to send you a test?
Yeah, no, I've had the test. I'm negatory.
Coughing's like a zombie bite these days, isn't it? If you cough in public, you kind of expect some.
I know people run a million miles from you. Yeah. It's been difficult. Well, I've done a shoot in England, and where we had two Covid supervisors with us. We all had to wear masks. They had to go and do things like measure the cubic capacity of the room before they could work out how many people were allowed in the room at the same time. It just slows everything down. It's really quite difficult, quite stress-making, and I just I kind of salute NHS people, because I was wearing the mask all day, and it really knackers you. I don't know what it is about it, but it also, because what I do on set is all I do is I communicate with people, and people can't hear what I'm saying, I can't hear what they're saying, and it just slows things down. So it's possible. We did it. It was fine. It worked out okay, but it was hard work. And I've also done a shoot which was remote, where I was filming an actor in California in his home, and he's not allowing anyone closer than sort of 15 feet from him or something. So that was done via Zoom, and we sent a crew up to give him set a camera up, and he walked out of his house, walked to the camera. I could talk to him on the Zoom, and that was also really difficult because the agency were in London. The whole thing was not easy, and it sounds great to be able to sit at home and direct in America over the internet, but there's actually a bit of a pain. And then I've just shot in Slovenia, which they have a great film infrastructure there. It's the first time I've shot there, and it was really good. They were very, very careful. I had to have a COVID test before I left. I had to have a COVID test when I arrived. Everybody was very, very careful. Everybody was wearing masks and social distancing and all that sort of stuff. So it was actually quite a good experience, and they seemed to be able to get tests pretty easily there. But while we were there, unfortunately, Boris put it on the list. So I'm back, and I'm quarantining now. Once again, having had about 20 different tests telling me I'm fine, but I'm still not allowed to go and go outside or do anything.
But presumably becomes a very different experience for you directing it to how it was previously, and therefore is a different challenge for you. Do you have to do things quicker?
Well, one tries to do things quicker, but it slows everything down, because in the simplest way of describing it is that if you've got a room where you're filming people or a set, then you have normally you get the lighting people, the art department, the costume people are working on the thing. Everybody's kind of there, buzzing around, and I'm making sure that they're all working in the same direction. But at the moment, what you have to do is they all have to do their things separately. They can't all be together. So you have to do one thing, like the art department goes in and puts the setup, then they have to leave, the lighting guys come in, do the lighting, then it looks different. Then I want to change a few bits of props around, so lighting guys have to leave, the art department have to come back in, then they have to go so that the cast come in, and then the wardrobe people come in and just the wardrobe, they have to leave, then the makeup people come in and they're all in full hazmat suits and they come doing it. You know, you try to work faster, but you can't. It slows everything down.
Sounds a bit more of a kind of jigsaw puzzle than maybe a film set.
It is, yeah, it is. It's a logistical thing, and you know, I rely heavily on the AD and the Covid supervisors and the producers to sort of work out the logistics of how to make it run smoothly. But it does make my job much more difficult in a way.
Presumably, it must have quite a significant impact on the kind of choices that you would normally make as well. I mean, you must. Well, I don't know. Let me pose it as a question. Are you finding that you have to settle for a take which you might want to challenge ordinarily?
Well, that's an interesting question, but it does impact quite heavily on some creative side of what we're doing. Right. For instance, I had to do any shots where two people have to interact with each other. The only way you can do it is by having people who are in the same social bubble. So, you know, I needed a shot of somebody having a kind of prosthetic makeup put on. So I had a prosthetic makeup artist doing it, and so the shot was them actually doing it. And that the person they were doing it to had to be someone they were actually living with. So there was no, if you're casting or you're casting people that are a family, you have to cast a real family. You can't mix and match. So it impacts in that way. I can't honestly say it means that I'd let a take go that wasn't as good as I wanted, but you know, it does mean that perhaps I haven't cast the exact cast members that I would have chosen in the first place. So it you know, definitely has a bit of impact there.
And the other part of it, Danny, I mean, Jason and I have kind of covered this in a few of the talks, is obviously, you know, there's a different sensibility in the world right now, obviously, about, you know, what's acceptable and what isn't. In a comedy sense, right, when I'm guessing some of the stuff you've been doing is comedy, if not all of it, you know, is there a different sensibility around the type of scripts you're getting, or is it comedy is comedy and therefore, you know, basically life rolls on the same way?
You know what, I've started to get a few comedy scripts, but mostly the things I've been doing aren't particularly comedy. They're more, you know, sort of big special effect type action things. And I think that partly that's due to the fact that doing stuff with lots of actors and that sort of thing is slightly more difficult because you can't have all these people together. So there's been a run of things that are quite post heavy that I've been doing, but I have been getting some comedy scripts, and I think it's a good thing because, you know, in times of stress, that's really what we want. We want to have a bit of a laugh.
Absolutely.
We don't want to be constantly, you know, bamboozled with sort of being told how we're all isolating and on Zoom calls. You know, what we want to do is have a bit of a laugh. And in terms of the content of the comedy, I haven't noticed any particular sensitivity to anything. I mean, I'm quite sensitive about the comedy I do anyway. I won't do anything which I feel is laughing at people. I just don't like that. It's not my taste. I like, you know, we're all laughing together. I like finger pointing-y stuff, but, which rules me out of quite a lot of American work, actually. To be frank, but so I haven't yet noticed a sensitivity in that sense, but I'm sure it will come. But I think the main difficulty is that you know, your usual comedy scripts, like the ones I used to do with Peter Kay, for instance, where you'd have 4 or 5 people sitting around a table or in a restaurant or something like that. You physically can't do that at the moment. So, you know, that would be the difference.
Just coming back to what you were saying about the sort of progression of the work you've done. I mean, I have to say, obviously I've never directed anything, but directing remotely just sounds dreadful. Just sounds like the worst idea. But it sounded so setting that one aside, it did sound a little as though the decision making in Slovenia is perhaps a little bit more pragmatic than the decision making in London. Do you think that does that mark an improvement over time, do you think? Or do you think that there is, whilst perfectly safe, that some of the decision making and the way that they're dealing with the restrictions in somewhere like Slovenia is perhaps just a little bit more sensible than it is in London?
Well, I think they have, a vested interest in looking as safe as they possibly can do, because they are, their main business is not domestic. It's bringing in people from, there are people in our hotel from all over the world shooting there. I mean, it's very popular to shoot because it's at the time it didn't have restrictions, and it's more cost effective for agencies because they don't have all their cast costs, and also the art department and the film infrastructure is actually very good there. And if you're shooting on location, they have a wealth of different type of. I feel like I'm an advert for Slovenia. But it was a good. On the Slovenia tourist board, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, I was not sponsored by Slovenia tourist board. But because they have to seem to be a really safe place. Whereas I think we don't in a domestic work. Perhaps we don't care so much. Perhaps we're not, trying to get people from abroad here so much. But their entire industry relies on letting people outside Slovenia know that you go there, you're going to have a safe, good experience. So, perhaps there is a bit of laissez-faire here, which there isn't in some of these places which rely on being production services.
I thought our timing was going to work perfectly, Danny, and that we were going to do this just at the time that the Bond film was coming out. Obviously, we've been scuppered by that as well. But you've obviously been involved in the Bond extravaganza for a while now. Is there anything that you want to tell us about the film, or you can tell us about the current film, or do you get to see the film, or do you just relate the titles to the music?
Well, no, I know all about the film because I have to read the script and I have to see scenes from the films, and I've done all this stuff. I think if I told you what was in the film, I'd find a man clad in black swinging through my window with a silencer on his gun, and I'm not allowed to say what's in it at all.
It's a milk tray, obviously, just for a bit of
yes, exactly. And he'd be leaving
it over the head with it.
Yeah, shoot me and leave a box of chocolates. Yeah. I think I think it's potentially going to be a really interesting film. It's disappointing that it's going to come out a year late. I love working on it and doing it. I shot the music video for Billie Eilish, who obviously has her finger on the pulse, getting the coolest director in the world to direct her video for the coolest singer in the world. And I had heard of her just about.
It's typecasting.
And that was fun working with her, and that gives that actually, I think they released that video. They postponed the release of the video until when the film was going to be released in November, and then released the video just recently. I think thinking the film was going to come out in November, so it's got lots of kind of interesting clips that perhaps hadn't been seen before. But then, then it got knocked back again. So I think if they'd known it was going to get knocked back till April again, they probably would have held the release of the video for a bit longer. But anyway, that's out. So that's got a few good action sequences in it.
We normally wrap them up just by asking you your opinion on the state of advertising during the COVID period, and Jason in particular has been reasonably critical about the fact that maybe it's all been very uncreative to start with, although it's getting better. Have you been watching much stuff, and do you have a strong view?
I feel that the standard of stuff has not been particularly high, but then again, the practical problems of creating good work in the last 6-9 months has been, you know, terribly difficult. So I don't sort of you know, I am, like Jason, a bit critical of perhaps the standards of the work, but I'm sympathetic to the difficulties involved. What I would say is that I feel a little bit aggrieved that what seems to me to be happening a bit is that the perhaps clients and agencies to a certain extent aren't taking on board the fact that the playing field has changed and things have changed, and the way they deal with it is by saying, yes, it's all changed, it's all much more difficult, but we want everything to be exactly the same, and we want you to solve our problems, and can you do the same? But you know, you just can't. You know, things take longer. It's just more expensive. What can you do? I mean, you know, you just can't write the same script that you were writing a year ago. You have to not just pass the buck onto the production companies. You have to bear in mind when you're creating the work, if you want to create good work, and I think all of us have no other agenda than wanting to create work that we're proud of. If you're doing that, then you have to take a bit of responsibility for knowing what the practicalities are these days of doing that sort of work, and not just sort of brush it off onto somebody else or deal with it. And because it should be a partnership between us all trying to make this work in these difficult circumstances. You know, my heart sinks when I get a script in and it's got a little note from the producer at the bottom saying, we're going to need to think outside the box on this one, which basically means we haven't got enough money, you know. So I think there have been some not great work, but then and I think it's been a bit of bandwagon jumping as well, you know, the kind of the type of stuff and the thing, that a little bit of a lack of kind of imagination, and but
yep,
you know, things will get better. One hope.
Jason, we'll let you have the last word, Jason. Presumably to agree with Danny,
well,
I would suspect.
I mean, I mean, I'd echo everything Danny said. I mean, you've basically zoned in on all my criticisms. I think it's been very unimaginative, and I think there has been a reluctance to recognise the realities. I think what should have been happening really right from the get-go is a greater level of collaboration. Actually, agencies needed to ask production companies, you know, ask for guidance in terms of the scripts they create, rather than, you know, just writing the script as normal and then hoping for the best. That's a ridiculous way to behave in such changed circumstances. And I think, as I've mentioned a few times, the reality is that this is not a temporary phase, or at least it's not a short temporary phase. I panic people when I say this, but we're in year 1 of this pandemic, and we're likely to have year 2 and year 3 at the very least. So I think anybody who's holding their breath and waiting for everything to return to normal is being extremely foolish. And difficult as it is, everybody's got to adapt, and that means if things cost more, pay more, and work more closely with, you know, the producers and directors who know what they're talking about, and make sure that you're creating work that suits the circumstances.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, we will wrap it up there, and if it does go on for 3 years, we can be happy that we've got Danny a new role as the ambassador for the Slovenian Tourist Board.
Yeah, this is the point where he peels off his jumper with his "I love Ljubljana" t-shirt.
He will be able to supplement his income, and all will be well. Thank you both.
Hail Slovenia.
Cheers.